allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're off to an unusual start today.
Do you want me to,
I would love for you to do what you do.
say, wait till everybody's here?
We'll start this late, let's get to it.
Okay. Dan Marlowe,
Here.
Daniel Begier,
Here.
TJ McLaughlin,
Here.
Kevin Frost here, Daryl Lewandowski, Art Kahn, and Rob Rizzo.
Bob is gonna be absent. Approved. The other two, Daryl and Bart will be here shortly. I'll just be late. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Someone make,
I'd like to add to the agenda if I could.
oh, okay, what would you like to
Our
add?
starting time is 7 instead of 7:30. Can we add that to the agenda now?
Did we look into that as far as our bylaws? Do we know if we can even do that?
Yeah,
We can?
no bylaw change.
Okay. We'll put that, ants. Maybe new business items or either at the, after the presentation? Any suggestions, Ed? Or do you put something like that? Does it even matter?
Not really. It'd probably be better to have more folks here to participate.
Yeah, we'll have it at the end. They'll be here in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, probably put it under old business because it was discussed.
Oh, very good. Okay, well, under old business. Okay.
Nice.
Yes, fine.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Don't get mad. If you have to call people to come here, how in the world can they be prepared for a meeting?
I don't know.
Okay, then why do you bother?
Well, because we're a small group.
You have 4, that's all you need.
Yeah, I know. I just kind of, mother hen in me came out, I guess.
Well, yes, but you've got 3 people that are coming that don't know what they're gonna vote on because they're not prepared to come. That's my question.
It's 2 people and we've talked about it before, so it'll be all right. It shouldn't be a big discussion. Either change the time to 7 or not.
That's not the only thing you're doing tonight. You're doing a big thing on Arbor Hills. You're going to have a presentation on the landfill, and they're not prepared to do anything about it.
Well, we don't know if they're not prepared, so we're gonna move on.
I told you not to get mad. I think
I just can't argue about it anymore, I'm sorry. But your point is taken, Bonnie, it is, I agree.
We do get the packets a few days ahead of time.
Yeah.
So
Everybody should have had the packet done before they got here.
Can I say another thing?
Yes.
The packet says, right, I have the packet on my internet and in my hand, and it says 7:30. They ought to know that Mondays at 7:30, this was supposed to be here. Why, you're asking people to come and vote on the presentation on the Arbor Hills when they're not prepared. If they were prepared, they would have been here.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda for the Planning Commission on April 18th, 2022.
Adding.
And adding, in addition, discussion and vote on starting time from 7:30 to 7.
I second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda with the added change under old business items, change the time of the planning commission start time to 7 p.m. from 7:30, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Public comment? Because you're so on top of it, Bonnie. Chairperson comment? None? Okay. New business items. Arbor Hills Renewable Gas Facility, Natural Gas Facility preliminary and final site plan. Do you want to do a brief overview?
I want to try to do my briefest. If it's not brief enough, someone quote me. I guess you're
Okay.
the closest, so she'll quote me. So this is preliminary and final site plan, so this would be the only time it would be before this body. Renewable natural gas facility, the proposal is building on vacant site, a facility that would reclaim the biogas that's coming off from the landfill. It'll treat it and process it and ship it out to the DTE natural gas distribution system. There'll be a fenced compound that the building and most of the equipment will be located in. And there'll be a smaller fenced compound where the buildings that get it into the DTE system will be located. Wait for it to get settled here.
That's okay, keep going.
Yep. You have the property information on page 2. It is within the general industrial district. This is a permitted use within there, so not a special land use or anything tricky, it's just part of a permitted use. Future land use, it's within the general industrial area, so it's consistent with what the master plan calls for future use of the area. As far as natural resources go, there's not a lot of tricky stuff on the site. Topography is relatively flat in this area. There are hydric soils on the site, but no wetlands here. There are woodlands elsewhere, but they're not on the site, and they are proposing to preserve the trees with little fences around it. The soils are good. For the setback standards, the proposed buildings meet the setbacks. They're not dimensioned on the site plan, but they have a table on the front page that says how far back they are, and they're significantly farther than the minimum. The building height is good, the lot coverage is good, the floor area ratio is good. Let's see, a couple of things for fences, and you'll notice this on your suggested motions, is they're proposing to have barbed wire topped fence and fences that are 8 feet high. And for both of those things, this body needs to make a determination that it's necessary for public, what's the fancy phrase here, for security or public safety. So you don't need to necessarily have a big motion, you just need to say, yes, we believe this is necessary, and we document it. But all of the other developmental standards are consistent with what the zoning ordinance requires for that district. The access to the site, well, to the compound, the fence compound will have 2 points. They're both using existing roads. They'll be fenced, and there's going to be Knox boxes at those, so the fire department can get in there with that. Within the site, you'll notice in the fire chief's engineer, there are some questions about specifications for the asphalt and those types of things. They're working it out. They're just not quite to that phase yet of the design, but they've said we'll meet what the fire chief requires. The compound, you'll see on the plan, it shows the turning radius for fire trucks, so they're able to get around within there. For parking and loading, there are going to be 5 parking spaces, which is what's required. If they need extra, because there are a bunch of mechanics there, there's other spaces within the compound and just outside the fence compound to get it. For essential services, it's going to be connected up to everything that's already on the site. You'll note in the Township engineers review that they said we don't have all the information on those existing systems. They worked with the folks for Midwest who've been on the site for many, many years, and they certified with the stamp and signature that we know these systems and there's adequate capacity and it's not going to cause harm, so Stantec was comfortable with that. Let's see, landscaping and screening, there's nothing proposed, but there is existing landscaping and screening on the borders of this property, so no additional is going to be required. There's going to be exterior lighting proposed with this, and we don't have all the details to determine whether or not it's fully compliant with your lighting standards, so we noted that They can provide that, if you're comfortable with approving it, they can provide that for administrative review, and we add the comment of just adding the section that it needs to be compliant with your standards. I suspect there may have to be some changes because it looks like just kind of a generic cut sheet that shows wall packs, and you guys require the lighting be directed down. So just a minor change, I'm not really nervous about that, it's a relatively simple fix. They're not calling for any signs. It is an intensive industrial operation, which requires an impact statement, which they provided. As far as we can tell, it's the first time we've received an impact statement, and it touches on all the things that is required. They talk about how they're going to dispose of potential hazardous materials and how they're going to keep track of the materials that are coming in on and off the site. So for your decision criteria, there are some pieces of information your zoning ordinance says are supposed to be on the site plans, but they don't appear necessary to review for compliance, so you guys can grant a waiver from that as long as you can make a decision. It appears that the site plan is consistent with all of your decision criteria based on the conditions, and the conditions, again as a refresher, are that the fire chief is happy with the access and circulation, and that's just some detail stuff on the asphalt. Some utility system stuff for the fire chief, and that mostly is related to the firefighting and fire suppression within it. The additional lighting details, which could be approved administratively if you're comfortable with that. And then, again, the reminders that this body needs to determine if the barbed wire fence is necessary for public safety or security, and the same thing for the 8-foot tall fence. And that's my quick version.
That's very thorough. So if I was a really good planning chairperson, I would introduce Mr. Zach Michaels.
He is our new planner. Paul is working with him to bring him on board, and so thank you, Zach, and welcome. We're glad you're here.
I'll introduce myself at the end.
Okay, we'll
And
get back
maybe
to that.
remember to use the microphone too.
Yeah. You'll be in good company with that. Okay. Alrighty. Want to open up for discussion?
I do have a question. Some years back, the recycling plant over there caught on fire. And I noticed when they were fighting that fire, they had to call in trucks from other areas to hold the water, and they were pulling out of the Plymouth water tank. Is there sufficient pressure now? Have they rectified that? I'm not seeing where they're adding anything.
That's part of the fire chief's concerns, is he wants to know the volume there. I know there is a cistern on there currently that's supposed to allow 4 hours of suppression. The fire chief may say, I want a bit more, but he has raised that as part of his review.
Excuse me, Arnie Gelderman's Midwestern Consulting. We did have a conversation with the fire chief today. They do want more capacity, and that will show up in the construction plans that he can review. There is a 150,000 gallon cistern. There will be a separate above ground storage tank for firefighting installed as part of the project. So if I can ease your mind a little bit also, you can skip the 8-foot high barbed wire fences. We'll take those out. Okay. That kind of came along with a standard plant, okay, when the design went through. We don't need it at that site. It's interior to the overall site, which has security to begin with, so we don't need 8-foot high fences.
Okay. Check.
So just 6 foot tall, no barbed wire? Or 6 foot
Yep.
tall with barbed wire?
No barbed wire.
Okay.
One last thing
And,
to,
and we will also provide a photometric plan, okay? So it's,
Okay. I apologize for the delay, but I want to write these down in my notes because there are things that are not in the plan, that weren't presented in the plan. And so it's kind of difficult to review the plan in advance and then little last minute changes. So just want to make sure I take some good notes.
In my pens. I took you serious.
Excused.
Thank you so much for the call.
But you do have to talk to Bonnie after class.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's either this or stay home and mud and tape and light fixtures. Thank you. Safe.
Okay. Did anyone else have any questions? Everything was pretty cut and dry.
You probably maybe have some questions and let them get caught up.
I had a question. Where, because I was having kind of a hard time, trying to see like the lighting.
Yep.
Where are the, let's see, not the wall mounted, but the pole mounted floodlights located?
They are on the western side. Let me see which page.
Which page is that one?
Could speak to where they,
I'm trying to find them.
there are 4 pages of the lighting plan. It's
Yeah.
on like
Yeah, I
the third or
was-
the fourth one.
There's A, B, C. Which one shows the best?
Okay, on E601C. They're out here.
Okay, so those are freestanding poles, but are they? So is that just showing a scale as to how far away from the building they are? That's what I'm having a hard time
Yeah,
with it.
yep, it's to scale, so there's some equipment that's outside and this is providing lights for the.
Shining down on it, so they're floodlights, but they're gonna be,
That's why we're
Yeah,
requesting the
yes, okay,
clarification of the
okay.
specs.
and then there won't be any in that parking area?
No, just the ones on the building.
Okay.
Anyone else? The fence is solved.
That was solved, so.
They're aware of the requirements for the lighting. There's nobody here from Stantec, is there?
I just have, on the fire system, again, is that gonna be, both dry and wet, or is it combination as far as inside the plant?
Sorry, Mike, Andy said pretty much open to it. It'll be a combination.
Combination,
based on-
both
on
dry and wet.
Fire chief requirements, yeah.
Daryl, you all set? All right. Got a lot of papers here. Bart, did you have any questions, or we're gonna move on?
I'm ripping through as fast as I can here.
Okay, we're gonna move forward. Jack, did you, say there were some prepared motions in here?
Yep.
On what page? Oh, you got them? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, very good. Okay, all right,
I would recommend is the first two determinations, you guys can skip those, because they've said they're gonna
Yeah.
change the fence.
okay.
And then
That's
if
fine.
you decide to approve, adding a fourth one, that fences around the compound will be 6 foot high without barbed wire. Just to document what they have stated here today.
Thank you.
Please define compound real quick. Is that just around that facility or talking around the whole property?
Around the new proposed facility, just the renewable natural gas.
Okay. Okay, so well, you can make any one of those.
Okay. I'd like to move to approve the combined preliminary and final site plan for Arbor Hills Renewable Natural Gas Facility with the following conditions. Additional lighting details, fixture specifications, and photometric plan added to the site plan for administrative review. All exterior lighting shall comply with 60.03 exterior lighting of the Salem Township zoning ordinance. Approval by the fire chief with all of the fire chief's issues, including access to the facility. The barbed fence is being eliminated, and the fence will be 6 foot high with no barbed wire. That's it.
Nice job. I'll second.
Second, open up the discussion between,
Oh, we did discussion, we did it backwards.
It depends how strict you want to do with Robert's Rules of Order. The strictest Robert's Rules of Order is you don't talk about it until you have a motion on it.
Right,
So
right,
you're-
exactly, but we've had practice of discussing it first and then making the motion and voting on the motion.
That's
Yes.
just a good job, so. Okay, so, let's see,
So you
so,
wanna vote on that
so
motion?
Dan, and then TJ was second?
Yes.
Okay. Do a roll call vote?
Roll call.
Yes.
Bartlett. And Wall.
so,
Yes.
okay, so we're not having this,
No, we already did the discussion. We usually always do it
okay, can I
backwards.
just say, okay,
Okay, you got a question?
could someone just quickly explain why they wanted 8-foot barbed wire?
They took it away. No,
Okay, so
Yeah,
no
it's a
problem.
moot
it's not
issue.
even an
Okay,
issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any noise we should be concerned about? Is there any emanating noise or any like cyclic noise or anything coming out of this plant?
There is a
I
impact statement that's included.
Because of the distance from this facility, from the boundaries of the property, we don't have concerns with that.
And it's contained
So
within the
yes, there
building.
is noise?
And most of the equipment will be within the building.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know what type of noises come out of the natural
Yeah.
gas plant.
They have an impact study that's in here, and noises were not
Okay.
a concern, so apparently not.
Might be
Okay, that's
surprised, you can hear it now, so.
I live 3 miles away and I hear constant roll all the time when they fire up those burners. Will that go away?
There should be less burners, but there is an off-gassing pylon.
Some days it's worse than others, and, but I live 3 miles away and I hear, sounds like a jet engine all the time.
There's a lot of excess gas. And what you hear is the flare,
Yeah.
starting up the flare. This plant is taking the excess gas and cleaning it up and putting it into pipeline quality and then pumping it to DTE. So I don't know if the flare is gonna be gone, but it is diminished.
there will still be needs for flare on, portions of the gas,
Right.
not what is currently.
Anything we do for the sound?
Where?
That was just random.
Well, this will diminish the sound then, even though it might not totally eliminate it, it will diminish it?
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually an improvement on the sound.
The flare gets relocated, or it stays where it is? We're talking about the one right down here? It's reduced.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's reduced
Currently,
because-
there are 3 flares that are with the existing facility. The new RNG facility is just to the southeast of that. That will have 2 flares that go with it for the facility itself. So the flares themselves will move further south, but you'll have flaring, depending on what mode of operation the plant is in, from one of either the existing flares or the new flares. But in either case, it will be a lower volume than the current.
Net add of flares, overall less usage total between all the flares.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. You get more, you get less flaring total, so. Okay.
Because some of the gas is being diffused, not going through the
They're
flares.
sold to be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure.
Yes or no vote.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, site, you already got light from this, we just described lighting, but light from the flares, that's. Pollution, dust. Paved indoors.
Roll call. Pam Marl,
Yes.
Nobody seconded, who seconded?
TJ did.
Oh, I didn't hear it, sorry.
Daniel Gary,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Kevin Frost, yes. Dale Levinkowski,
Yes.
Bart Kahn,
Yes.
Dollars, you know the couple of tweaks to the site plan. If you have any questions, let me know. Don't want you to have to print it multiple times, but
And, we're probably talking to the fire chief this week and working out those details. So, thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Okay. Old business items. It's been brought up a couple months ago to change the time that the planning commission starts its meeting from 7:30 to 7. Did anybody, because we don't hold strictly to Robert's Rules of Orders, did anybody have any questions, concerns, anything?
We just heard comments that people get confused between the township meeting, board meeting, and our meeting. That
Mhm.
They're different times,
Right.
and they get them confused. That's the only thing I've heard.
I know. Wow. 7:30 is easier
I don't care.
for me, but I can make it work. I don't have any comments. Bart, should we make it 8 o'clock?
Or at least, what was it, 7:47, somewhere in there?
Perfect, so,
I've never
I just
had
see.
that. How many years have been here? 18 years I've been on this thing?
Oh my goodness, okay. Okay, well, there's no,
Brought candy.
yeah, that's right, you did, okay.
No, it really, whatever you guys wanna do, it
Yeah.
doesn't make.
Well, I
any
know
difference,
for
so-
working people, 7:30 is better when you're,
Yeah.
when you're working, and I don't know how it started that way, but that may have been, but since it's not in our bylaws, and people seem to wanna change it till 7, so, Okay.
Darryl don't have any issue with them.
No, I'm on all. in
They're
favor.
working people. They're the hardest working people.
Well, I find it interesting, Dan tells us that we gotta change the time because people are confused. What people would that be in this room on any given night? They're confused about.
I think this was a bad night to bring that up.
No, it's not a bad night. This is-
Oh, there was no confusion, I just wasn't showing. I was sanded.
I'm not talking about the board and I'm not talking about people forgetting. I'm talking about what public are you talking about when you say people are confused and they forget? Because it's the same people basically here meeting after meeting.
Yes.
The reason that meetings were at 7:30 is so that working people, people that have farms, could get their chores done before they had to rush to a meeting. There's no consideration given to the public. That's been very clear. Nobody up there cared or asked, what do the people that faithfully come to the meeting, what would you prefer? It's very clear, extremely clear.
Trustees meet at 7, seems like everybody has an easy time getting to there.
No, Kevin, the previous board switched it to 7 because it's the same thing that you're doing. It was more convenient to the board than it was to the general public.
It's tough, we don't really have any general public here.
No, well, we do at times.
I don't know. My goodness. I think it's always been like at 7:30, but I haven't been here forever. Huh? It feels like a long time sometimes, but I love it. But, I don't know. I prefer 7:30, and I know when it's been brought up in the past, and nobody wanted to be the chairperson, the chair says she can't make it at 7 o'clock, so we stayed till 7:30. We have no input from anywhere. I don't know why we're changing it. I don't know the purpose. I personally have never heard any complaints about it being at 7:30. If it's been 7:30 for how long? 18 years?
It's been
Plus.
7:30 ever since I've been sitting in this exec chair.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We're just going off what we know, and so far, the only thing we know is that it's been 7:30 with no
And
input from anybody.
if there's an indication that the public wants to keep it at 7:30 for convenience.
Well, there's no public,
Wait a minute.
except these two, who are regulars, and they have, excuse me, it's just not, let me finish my thought, please. Except for the two who are faithfully here, so, and it wasn't on the agenda to give anybody any notice if they wanted to contribute. I mean, we do get people that come in now and then, so maybe before we make a rash decision, we should,
Is they voice an opinion that it's harder for them to come at 7 than it is at 7:30?
I don't know, we haven't asked them yet. But I mean, it should be more than just us, but, because it's not always just us, so maybe we don't need to change this
I don't care
right now.
when we come, but I've been on the board for a while. And the majority of the board a while back, most of those people are not here anymore, but they were pushing to have it at 7. You preferred 7:30, so we deferred to you and we went with 7:30. I don't care which way you wanna have it, doesn't matter to me. I can come at 7 or 7:30. But you were one of them, and you know there were,
And what's
I can
the
name
reason?
several others.
What's the reason for 7?
Convenient to come at 7, and then that gives us time till 10 o'clock, because if we go from 7:30, we have less time to work. And then we gotta, take it, do we wanna extend the meeting or postpone?
Yeah.
So it gives us the other half hour that sometimes we ask for at the end, when it becomes 9:45, can we extend it a half hour? To finish what the business that we were concerned with.
I'd have to say that is probably pretty rare.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it might cause more confusion to change it now.
Doesn't matter to me.
Well, I can't see the board comes in at 7, and nobody's ever said a word about it. And all I remember is 7 for the board.
No,
Well-
it's 7:30 for decades.
Who brought it forward,
Okay,
this idea?
I'll agree with that, what the majority says.
Right.
I would like to ask our two faithfuls, what time do you prefer?
I've been coming here, I've moved in and built here in 72, so I've been coming here faithfully since. And it's always been 7:30, and it works for me.
How about you, Mrs. Hamilton?
I prefer 7:30. When in the summer, I have to stop working in the field to come. All 7 o'clock does is it means it's less time to be in the hayfield. And to Mr. Lewandowski's comment about you can now have a longer meeting, public meetings should not last extended periods of time. The vast majority of board members come from work. The library has a rule of thumb, we have a 2-hour meeting and that's it, because after 2 hours, people are done listening. They're done giving it their full attention because they're tired. So I find that to go to 7 so you can now go to 10, I absolutely oppose that. I think meetings need to become shorter. I think you guys did a great job the way you handled the landfill tonight. It wasn't dragged out. You had a great synopsis, you asked your questions, and that's how business should be conducted with these meetings. So I prefer 7:30, and just because everybody else does it, doesn't make it right. That is the worst argument I've ever heard. When I used to try it as a child, my mother used to ask me if everyone jumped off a cliff, would you? And of course, my answer was yes, I would. But it is not a valid argument, and nor should it ever be raised as a valid argument. It doesn't matter what everybody else does. We need to do the best thing and the right thing. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
I would like to say that one of the things that part of the purpose of us discussing and questioning each other and questioning the public and being questioned ourselves is to bring out ideas. So we don't always know the answers before we get here. You know, you can go through that packet. I get them all highlighted and checked in, but you don't always know the answer until you actually get here and throw discussion out here. So I think that's a good thing. I like 7:30. When I said I couldn't used to get here at 7:30 because I have children, and when they get home and you've got to feed them and do all that stuff, well, now they're getting older, but now I have a job. So I prefer 7:30 for my own personal reasons, but also because I'm not really seeing a justification, nor have I heard one of a purpose of changing it that's factual and has any. There are no facts to it that I've heard that, you know, people say, how many people say, or the meeting goes late. We hardly ever have a late meeting, so unless there's some other purpose. Mr. Khan.
Sounds like it's 7:30.
Okay.
Great.
All right, well, it is on the agenda, so maybe we should,
well, we don't have to do a thing then, because if we don't change it, we don't have to do anything.
Okay.
We don't-
okay, all right,
I'm good with the
Okay.
public.
okay. Stay at 7:30.
Take care of them.
Okay. All right, now to the fun part. Land presentation, we have a presentation by the Land Preservation Conservation. Well, you have the show, so if you would like to introduce yourself, so everyone knows who you all are.
No landfill flares, and I will try to be brief, okay? My name is Steve Schaefer, I'm on the Land Preservation Board.
I'm Susan Bejan, I'm the chair.
Seth McRobb, secretary.
Bruce Reed.
Barbara.
So what we have tonight is just a brief presentation on the land preservation status. There's a number of things that we'll be talking about, the agenda and the presentation. Yeah.
It's been waiting all this time, I decided to go off.
Oh, for Pete's sakes.
Do you want me to turn half the lights on?
Yeah. Holy
If I turn the lights off, I'll forget to remember the, with the lights.
I
Okay, he already said he's not coming.
He can't make
Yeah,
it,
he's
yeah.
okay. If you're not here, you don't get any candy.
Just saying.
You're gonna have to go back.
It's not.
Let's go.
That's
pretty high bar.
It's not for you, that's for everybody.
I tried to give it away to Dan, but he's being
I
healthy.
can't, I need a survey.
Oh my goodness, get it away from him.
Bruce, we need you.
Thank you, Martha. That's very kind.
How long has this TV been here?
There might have been some good shows on there while we had it.
For years.
Really?
We're watching that.
Has it always been installed?
We waited so long, we got disconnected.
Intermission.
Yeah.
Well, they're
Do you wanna
flagging,
move
so-
over here so you can see?
Now,
Well, move your chair.
We're working away at it.
Candy before the show.
Microsoft's taking a little.
Oh, Oliver.
Smells like something.
Thank you, Bart.
You're welcome. Bruce, how come it's not,
It's all this great modern
There we
technology.
go.
Right.
Okay, we're back.
Candy, young ladies.
Chocolate time.
There's a bunch already.
I have it.
We saw Barbie golf practice the other day.
Yeah, that's actually a photo of two bald eagles off of North Victoria Road on Salem. Just apparently hanging around.
They're just minis, like the ice bars.
Salem residents.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, you're back. Would anybody like some candy for the show?
I had pie for dinner.
Homemade.
Good.
Two sets.
Is this yours?
Might be, yeah.
Does that look familiar?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
You gave it to me a long time ago.
Okay, yeah.
It's like July 14th,
Okay.
2021.
Really?
So tonight, this is the agenda we're gonna talk about, and this is actually a presentation that we're gonna actually share with the board of trustees. Can everyone hear me? So what we're gonna talk about tonight is we're gonna present a number of slides. First of all, the first one will be a snapshot of Salem Township with public land and development rights purchased by acres. We're gonna look at anticipated population trends in Salem. We're gonna identify a need for more public land in the township. We're gonna review an analysis of what Salem should look like, and from a parks and developments position. And we're gonna look at the surrounding communities and compare Salem to the surrounding communities. What do they look like versus us? We're also going to present a number of Land Preservation Board's recommendations. And finally, our hope is you walk away with the impression that this is a fact-based presentation, that we're using real data to the best of our ability. So each year, we make a summary of Salem and what Salem looks like from a public land versus development right purchase, and we present that to the board. And I put this paper together this year. What we have here to the left is, if you go down, you'll see the properties that are included in the development right purchases and also the parks. The properties in red are the parks that are open for public access, and the properties in black are the ones that have development right purchases. In total, there's just over 1,400 acres that are involved in these two programs in this township. In total for Salem, there's just under 22,000 acres total in Salem. So the items here listed in red are broke out as I described. The ones that are underlined are the ones that this Land Preservation Board has had a direct input, which totals just over 1,000 acres. So as of today, there's currently 287 acres open for public access, which represents 1.3% of the total township. There's just over 1,100 acres in development rights retained, which represents 5.2% of the township. A total of the 93% of the township is in private property, with the 5.2 private property, but development rights retained. So I was feeling pretty good about this, and one thing I want to point out is our first meeting as a land preservation board was in 2007, and in that first meeting, Salem only had 27 acres in the entire township, which was the Creek Shed Preserve. So I was feeling pretty good about this, and I started thinking, and that always gets me in trouble. And I started looking at population trends of what we think Salem's gonna look like. And in order to reference that, I went back and I gathered up the SEMCOG data from the US Census and went back to 1960. I only picked 1960 because that was the year I was born. So I looked at the township there as a population trend of where we were, and you can see over the last 60 years, we've had 3 population blips that were fairly substantial. And when you look at it, and it makes a lot of sense, the growth period between 1960 and 1970, that was the baby boomer spread. The 2000 followed the 1990s. We had kind of lean years in 1980. That was when we had high inflation and high interest rates. And then, yeah. And in today and 2020, in the last 10 years between 2010 and today, we've seen a 25% growth, or 24.7. So I asked, we talked about it, and we said, what's Salem gonna look like in the next 10 years? And if we just assume a 20% growth, and I think that's probably conservative, because what's different now than in the past is the other areas around us, Canton and that, are built out. And there's gonna be a lot of building pressure on Salem in the next coming decades for us to build. And I assumed that we would only see a 20% growth, which I think is conservative. But we also have higher interest rates are climbing, and we're seeing inflation, so that may be predicated, but at some point, we're going to see growth. Then we started talking more, and we have to take into account the show stack development that's going on down on Garfitson Road. And we estimate that that can contribute somewhere around 4,000 incremental people into our township, which will bring our total township population in 2030 up near 12,000 people. So we can expect to see by 2030 a 45 to 60% increase in Salem population by 2030. And that's 4,000 to 5,000 people over the next decade, depending on the economics and how many people move into that area housing. And again, that's based off of our assumptions and SEMCOG data. So the message here is, under current conditions, there will be only 287 acres of public land in all of Salem Township to support 12,000 people in 2030 if we continue at the current rate. And of the 287 acres, only 2 parcels in our township are fully protected. That's the Creek Shed Preserve, which is 27 acres in the land legacy, and the Shatter Preserve, which is 25 acres in the land legacy, for a total of 52 acres. The Salem Farm Preserve is our largest preserve in our township, but it is an asset of the Salem Township and not protected from future development. Now, I want to say that the board has passed an ordinance to protect the Salem Farm Preserve, but ordinance can be changed. And in the future, if some future board decides to develop or sell that property, they can by simply changing the ordinance. So unlike the other 2 properties, it is not fully protected, although this board has done the best they can to protect it. So the question came up once a while back, and TJ, I think you were the one who asked me, what should Salem look like? What should we have from preserves and parks? So I did some research, and I'm not a planner. So I got on the internet, and I found an article from Charles Downing Lay, and a reference from the data points down below if you want to look it up on the web, who in 1914 set up the city planning for the city of New York and the city of Detroit. And we've actually gone back and validated that a lot of what Downing laid out is still applicable to the city of New York. Lay assumed that 12.5% of the total areas of the city should be devoted to parks. This meant that a city of 12,000 acres should have 1,500 acres of parks, and for a city of 100,000 people, this meant that an average population density of 8 1/3 persons per acre of the city, and an allowance of 1 acre of park space to 66 2/3 people. So I applied that math to what Salem would look like. So if we looked at Salem Township and took 12.5% of the approximately 22,000 acres, we should have 2,700 acres of parks, just over 2,700 acres of parks, versus the 287 we had today. Or if we applied the 1 acre for every 8 1/3 people, based on 12,000 people, we should have just over 1,400 acres of parks. And then another model, if you looked at it, for every 10 acres, or for every 100 people, I'm sorry, or 10 acres for every 100 people, we should have 1,200 acres versus the 287. No matter which line item you choose to look at, we have a shortfall. So based on this, we should target 2,744 acres for parks in Salem Township. One of the other factors that come into play is rural character. And we know that based on the meetings that we've had and public feedback on our Flag Day, rural character is a very important characteristic of this township. And based on that data, we determined that 12.5% of our township should be in development right purchases, also 2,744 acres. The message here is 25% of the land in Salem Township should be preserved, 50-50, half in parks and the other half in development rights. So we asked, is this real? Is this realistic? Is 25% a real number, and can it be justified? And we stumbled upon the 30 by 30 initiative, which has been targeting right now and currently in the United Nations Convention for Biological Diversity. And that is a push to have 30% of the earth, land and sea, protected by 2030. And this is necessary in order to stop global warming, or at least to stem it. So is 25 realistic? Yes, that's a real number, and it is supported with facts and data. And again, this is referenced below if you would like to look that up on the web. So we asked, what are our neighbors doing? How does Salem compare to our neighbors? And I went out on the internet and I gathered up as much data as I could as far as parks. And I was amazed how difficult this was really to get a total summary. So I believe this is to be correct. It could be plus or minus 1%. But I looked at South Lyon, and currently South Lyon has 19.1% of their land open to the public, but that includes the Island Lake Recreation Area, which is state land, right? Dexter also has a lot of state recreational land that's open for public access. Ann Arbor has an aggressive program for land preservation, and you can see the breakout below, but everything ranges down from 19% down to Salem at 1.3% total. So I'll let you absorb that data for a moment. Any questions, comments?
What do taxes look like compared to that same list?
I don't know. I didn't compare the taxes.
Yeah, okay.
But I do know that the properties in Dexter and South Lyon that have the state grounds, that's a lot of public hunting land.
Yeah, and that's maintained by the state?
Maintained by the state.
Yeah, it's certainly advantageous.
Would Canton include like the project, you know, what do you call it, the projects, in other words, the subdivisions that have their own private little parks? Is that?
When Canton, I just looked it up on the internet.
I don't even know if they still have those.
Yeah, Canton just said we have 800 acres of parks, right? And that's all I found. Right?
Okay.
So our recommendation, Salem should actively versus passively invest in land that's open to public access. We've been partnering with we need to partner more with Washtenaw County Parks and Land Legacy to avoid direct township ownership. And that's one of the fallbacks, is that we do not have a management crew, we don't have a maintenance crew. But if we partnered with the Washtenaw County, they have that facility. We would only contribute financially to assist in the purchase of that land. There are currently no Washtenaw County parks in Salem Township. I don't know, really, if you stand back and look at that for a moment, and Sue and I have actually met with Washtenaw County and said, look, we want parks in our township. And we're one of the few townships in the county that doesn't have a park. And we need to be standing on their desks, jumping up and down more. part of it's gonna be helpful is if we come to the table and we've got some money we wanna contribute. We don't wanna pay for it all, but we wanna contribute. Right? The other thing is, if we partner with the Land Legacy and the Washtenaw County Parks, the township avoids the direct ownership, the township also avoids the burden of maintenance and the responsibility to police that property, right? Another thing we're asking or recommending is to support and develop an ordinance that all future developments maintain a 1 acre public land for every 100 people, or have developers contribute to a land bank within the township for the purchase of a larger parcel of land, similar to wetland mitigation. So if a large developer comes in, they have to say, we're gonna bring in X amount of people, and within that development, over and above the wetland protection, say, here's 2, 3, 4, 5 acres of land that are gonna be identified as a park. So now the parks are gonna be part of development and not strictly part of the responsibility of the township or burden of the county. Or they could say, we can't do it, that doesn't work into our plan, but here's some money, now we'll buy a larger piece of ground someplace else.
Can you say those numbers again of what you suggested for 1 acre for what?
1 acre of public land for every 100 people.
You have this presentation, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Am I on the wrong page?
yeah.
And there's a recommendation. Yeah.
I'm on recommendation.
You know, you should be there.
Right there, page 9.
Yeah, go
Oh, I'm passing.
one ahead,
Wrong recommendation,
just two
okay.
pages, recommendations.
You were so well organized, I was wondering where. Went wrong. Okay,
So,
there it is.
so Washtenaw County, what was their response when you,
Well, there's a lot of stuttering, you know, and I'll be quite honest, that I'm a firm believer that the squeaking wheel gets the grease, right? And if you're not yelling and making noise, they're not gonna pay a lot of attention to us. And we talked on many occasions, there's a few properties around that we were looking at and trying to get their interest in. And
Something got more important here.
yeah, exactly. And it really took Sue and I to sit down and say, we need to talk to your boss, because we're not getting the response out of you, so let me talk to your boss. And then when we started doing that, we started getting a little more attention, right? But at the end of the day, they came back and they kind of made a comment saying, well, are you guys willing to contribute, right?
you know, they get the same revenue from the landfill that we get.
Yeah.
That's pretty substantial.
Actually, get a little more.
And
Maybe a
and
little bit
we
more.
actually talked about that, but one of the things that I don't know is, where does that money from the landfill go? Who gets that money in the Washtenaw County? Where does that check go? Because if that's the case, if they're getting X amount of dollars from the landfill, I wanna know, hey, what are you guys doing for Salem? Because we're the ones that live with it, right?
Yeah, if we gotta live with the landfill, at least they could do is provide some parks, right?
Well, plus our tax, all the taxes, everyone in our township pays taxes towards Washtenaw
Right.
County for land preservation. It's part of a millage that, and we don't get to participate, they haven't participated with us
Right.
to give us some of that money back from for all the years that we've been paying into it.
But
And you're
this
gonna
is one
make
of the
this,
first- Go ahead.
well, you're gonna make this presentation to the board, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is one of the first runs that Salem has ever made back to Washtenaw to get some of that millage
No,
back.
No, we've been working with them for years.
Yeah, we have been.
Well, I guess I'm saying like within the last 30 years, 40 years.
This is the
not-
first time we
yeah,
went to
3
the
or 4
boss's
years,
boss.
certainly. I'm
We
sure
went
you
to the
guys-
boss, but it was a Zoom meeting, and
Yeah.
that,
Well, the message was clear.
it was clear, and she was pretty,
But again, I mean, it's, we need, the problem has been is we need to be more aggressive in this, and we need to put some money towards it. What I'm asking from the planning commission, and really that's kind of a conversation that we need to have with the board, what I'm asking for the planning commission is to support, to write the ordinance
right.
for new developments. That's what I'm asking you guys for. The other thing that I'd like to do is establish a subcommittee with the planning commission,
What do you mean by new developments, commercial or?
go back to the
Residential.
residential, right? So,
So like commercial developments where?
No, for
Yeah,
like a new subdivision, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Not to
big-
name any names, but it starts with a show and ends with, it rhymes with pack.
Well, I figured them, but what I was
Done deal.
wondering if you're saying new developments, what we were including in, you know, was there a size criteria of what?
Well, that's
is that,
kind of
or,
what we
you know,
have to,
Somebody wants to,
and we talked about this back in July, because we don't have a lot of the detail on that, and what we can and can't do. And that's kind of where we need to go, and that's the next bullet item, is establish a subcommittee with the planning commission to write and develop an ordinance that parks are incorporated into new developments. And then,
Go ahead. Maybe not, but-
go ahead.
My question is, you know, you say, about subdivisions coming in. As far as I can see in the future, I don't see another show stack. Because you've gotta have sewer and water to have a development of that size. And so far, that's just designated in that one spot only. So far as in here, if you don't buy up, clay property, you don't have to worry about it, because the only thing you put in there is, engineered field and that, but still, if you cut it below 2 acres, then you got a problem, because you got a septic tank and well for a 2-acre plot, so subdivisions won't be that large.
Well, what about that development right along North Territorial all the way to Weed almost? That's another
Where?
whole, that whole south of North Territorial from,
USD.
in the USD, all the way almost to Weed. All that, all the way to M14, that's all gonna be houses there.
But that's got sewer and water.
But it's people, we're talking about
But
people.
I mean, that's what happens when you bring in sewer and water. If you're anticipating a subdivision like that, yes. But
But
as far
that's,
as I
that's
know,
where
where-
this ordinance would be applicable
That's where,
to.
that would be perfect for that.
If someone came and picked that up to
Exactly.
develop it.
Yeah, if they're gonna develop that, that'll be more than 100 people, and you would do
But-
1 acre for like 500 people. You'd have 500 acres, they'd have to do it according to the ordinance.
yeah, but, you know, you're looking at every place is gonna have sewer and water. That's not
No,
happening.
we didn't,
We didn't say that.
no, we didn't say that.
Okay, what's the minimum acreage?
That's
per
what
house
this
then?
committee
Right
has
now, it's
got to
2
put
acres.
together. But this is what we're saying, is we need to establish that committee to lay out those guidelines.
And you're talking a developer, not a
The
single
developer,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about you and building a house for your, for yourself and maybe a mother.
I think it's a really interesting proposal to think about. I mean, it's kinda neat. It's
Because-
imaginative, you know, my gut says 100 people, that's, well, no, yeah, I built an 8-bedroom house, but there's only 2 people living there. Prove me wrong. So, you know, it maybe should be measured on some other, you know, if it is, how many bedrooms or you
Well,
know,
then it
something
can go
like
back
that.
to the 12.5%.
Yeah, or something like that. My question goes back to the very beginning of that is, where is there evidence, take this the right way, I'm just
Go ahead,
asking,
go ahead.
where's the evidence of the vacuum?
What's back?
Well, we're saying, oh, you know, we should have more, we should have 12.5%, we should have 1,400 acres. Where is the evidence that says this? Because I'll tell you what, when I was a kid, people came home and they left their home and they went down to the parks. Now everybody come home and get on Amazon for the next 3 hours and sit in front of their computers and where's the evidence of the
Sure.
vacuum, of the
So the
draw
document
for?
is on, if you go back into page 6 of, there it is, of what Salem should look like. And under Charles Downing Way, who set, and if you can look him up, he was one of the master planners that set all the planning together. It's his recommendations that that's what cities should look
okay.
like. It's also our recommendation, based on the preservation of rural character, that we should add equal amount of 12.5% and 12.5% in parks, 12.5% in development right purchases.
Sue knows me, I play devil's advocate all day.
Okay, go ahead.
If someone said 12.5% should be this, what if you just said to everybody, hey, we're gonna up your piece of land by 12.5%, we're not gonna have any parks? Do you think you get a lot of thumbs up from the township?
Say that again.
We're gonna give you bought 100 acres? No. Salem's gonna give you 112.5 acres. we're gonna up your acreage by 12.5%, and we're not gonna have any parks. Are you okay with that, Salem Township residents?
From who? How would that
Yeah,
work?
how does that work?
I'm just,
That didn't make
Yeah, but if
sense.
that
It's-
doesn't
I know
work,
it's
why
not-
are we talking about it?
I'm trying to understand what the evidence of the pull. This guy in 1914 is in 1914. Yes, we don't compare to that. Yes, it was probably certainly applicable then. I'm saying where, and I'm not saying there isn't. I would love to see more parks. Let me be, first of all, straight up with that. I would love to see parks. This one down here, south of 5 Mile on Salem Road,
That's
I
the
pitched
farm.
out, hey, could we dig that out, dam up the end, put a lake in there, so the stream feeds into a lake, the lake feeds out into the same stream, so the same thing, we just excavate it out, put up a band shell, and have grass seeding on a band shell, and we can have people out there, I'd love to see it, that's the type of thing I grew up with. It'd be fantastic, whatever. So I'm all
Too
for
much
it.
noise.
But what I'm just saying is, if someone said,
Backyard.
hey, prove that there is a want, that there is a need, that there are people saying, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please, in Salem.
They got a park
That's what I'm saying. Something like that would be
in Plymouth Township that is packed all the time, just packed.
Say that again, what's that?
It's a Plymouth Park.
McClumpha
but-
Park.
McClumpha is a nickname for it, because it's off of
McClumpha Park.
Maclumpha Road.
People go and walk, people are
That
actually
park
walking,
is so popular, it isn't funny.
See, and
people are
maybe,
enjoying
maybe,
that.
maybe
And
I
you
wasn't
said
clear,
something,
maybe I wasn't clear.
Steve, you said something about, it's all built up all around us.
Yes.
Okay, there's gonna be a lot of pressure. There was no sewer and water when Showstick started their thing, okay? There was no sewer and water, now there's gonna be sewer and water, okay? And that doesn't mean down the road where it's all scheduled for apartments,
Right.
just down the road from them, it's all been planned way ahead of time, long time ago, for apartment houses. Some developer comes in, you think he won't get sewer and water in there to build apartments?
And I remember in the 1970s, I sat in a meeting in Canton, and they pounded on the table, and they said there would be no further development beyond Beck Road.
I heard that, I heard all of
All
that,
right.
yeah. I lived through all that.
And look at it today,
Yeah.
all right?
Just takes
Look
one
at it
judge.
today. And my point is things change,
one
right?
judge.
Yeah, there's,
Sure.
So I'm not a resident of Salem, I work here, and I don't understand taxes at all. Okay, so somebody understands this, maybe they can help me understand. So if you go to Washtenaw County and they say, yes, we were gonna put a Washtenaw County park in, where does that money come from to run the park? Cause you kinda said that we have landfill money that goes to Washtenaw County, and we don't know where that goes back into the township. So how do you protect that, we say we go, okay, Salem Preserve now is a Washtenaw County park.
Comes from Washtenaw County.
Washtenaw County Park, it's theirs now. How do we assure that they don't, in 10 years, turn around and go, we're gonna sell it to a developer and they're gonna develop it? How do you
They don't,
make an ordinance for that?
they don't own the property.
They don't own necessarily own the property, depends on how you set that up. It
Okay,
would
so-
probably be preserved, it would be one of those long-term preserves, and they would manage and operate it, and take away the need for Salem Township to be responsible for cleaning it up and managing it and keeping it in
Who
proper.
pays for that?
The-
The answer
All of
to your-
our taxes that we've
Yeah.
been paying would go towards that, and they have a big pool
We
of
don't
it,
have
and
a
they
high
they
tax.
designate it and manage their
county
money.
millage.
We don't have a high tax rate here.
We have
So-
we pay towards Washtenaw County.
A couple of
Taxes.
things, Ann. First of all, the way that you keep parkland or open land open is you have a restricted deed.
Right.
That's what your people that are in the green belt, and just for accuracy, our land is not yet in the green belt. You guys wanted to be factual, you said the Hamilton's is not yet in the green belt, we're still working that way.
Okay,
I'm
but we
just-
got a notice said you were, so,
Yeah.
okay.
We are not.
Okay, all right.
There's been no money exchanged hands, the
All right,
final
very
things have
good.
not yet been signed.
Thank
It's
you.
our intent to continue to work that way. But Ann, to your point, land is a finite commodity. They don't make any more of it. And what they're doing today, it is a needed discussion in Salem Township. Canton Township used to be the sweet corn capital of Michigan. The best sweet corn was grown. Gills were never gonna sell their farm, and they did. They had one of the largest dairies in southeastern Michigan. And so what they're doing now, they're not saying we're gonna buy parks, we're gonna buy land, but what they're saying is as land becomes available and funding is available, it's something that you consider. And you're absolutely right, when you go to any developed area, because some of my children live in developed areas, they have what are called pocket parks. They're not hundreds of acres like the preserve, they're small parks. And they're utilized by people that live in these very dense neighborhoods to exercise their dogs, to exercise their children. A lot of these people have very small backyards, and again, we understand today, most of us live on large acreage. A pocket park makes tremendous sense over by Northville Crossing today. It makes a lot of sense, you guys have talked about Showstack's development, and it makes a lot of sense there. But you have to do the planning today. And to talk about taxes, vacant land, just regular vacant land, requires 30 cents of services for every dollar of tax it generates. Commercial and industrial, it's about $1 for every dollar it generates. Residential requires $1.40. And so there's a lot of benefits to having open land. And contrary to where Bart said, you go home and you sit and you watch TV, I'm not a young person anymore. But my husband and I ride bikes.
Sure, but
And I'm talking, we ride them all over rails to trails. If you know anything about the old rails to trails, the grade is not great. So if you're older, it's an easy grade to ride. We ride 20, 25 miles at a time. And those places, there are a lot of people on them. There are people, you'll see them rollerblade, you'll see runners on it. And again, I'm getting and understand, I support what this committee does, because it's so important. This is, if you think about this, this is a long-range plan, well beyond probably most of us in this room. But if we don't make it a priority today, we won't have it tomorrow. Canton's got this big summit area. It's a great area. It's parks, it's got outdoor venues, it's got some of their recreation stuff, including like where you can have there's a municipal gym, pool type stuff. They did that because somebody had the forward planning, and that's what's being said tonight. And it is important, because we're naive to think that in 100 years Salem Township may not be, as was referenced tonight, like Canton, which is not built out yet. But it's unbelievable the amount of development and the dense development they have. Go to Cherry Hill. I remember when Cherry Hill was farmed.
I do too.
Me too.
I do too.
And if you think that development can't happen here, it was never gonna happen there. And that's all this committee's saying. And I think that they've done a great presentation, and I think we need to, as a community, I think we need to let them have that conversation with the board. And obviously, there's a part for the planning commission, because you guys write that ordinance, but it is a needed discussion. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
So I'll finish up where we started here with the establish, one of the recommendations we're asking, and thank you, Linda, but we'd like to establish a subcommittee with the planning commission to write and develop an ordinance that parks are incorporated into all new developments. One of the things that we have to spell out in that discussion is how big, what acreage, who owns it, all these things that we talked about, and we actually touched on that, I think, when we met last time. The next thing that we like to ask from the planning commission is to appoint a liaison to the land preservation board. Bruce was that person, he got promoted. So, we need some representation from the planning commission. The other thing we'd like to ask is that the next time we rezone, that the farm preserve is rezoned to agricultural, because it is currently zoned as low density residential, or high density residential, I believe. The farm preserve.
It's 1 acre parcels now.
Yeah. So the farm preserve is established to preserve agriculture in this township, right? and to keep the rural character and establish agriculture in the township. I know it is not the intention of the current board to sell or develop that property, but if a board in the future ever decides to sell or develop it for whatever reason, whether they need the money for schools, roads, or to cover legal actions, a developer, if he or she buys that, are not gonna walk into a property that's already zoned for housing, right? So turn the property back to agriculture, zone it as agriculture, and all it does is just creates, I don't like to use the word roadblock, but a position where the community is gonna give their input on zoning and rezoning that property. The other item that we would like to do, and probably part of this planning subcommittee, is to look at Ann Arbor has just passed 2 new ordinances for natural feature setback. That's X amount of feet has to be kept between waterways or lakes. So to protect the water runoff, so no untreated water gets into the rivers and streams. We need to take a look at that and see how that could be applied to Salem. The next one is a tree and woodland resource preservation ordinance. Back to kind of what Linda touched on these new developments, is they'll come onto a piece of property, a wooded piece of property, and the developer will do a total clear cut of that land, and everything on that land will be gone, right?
And then they name it after what they
And then they'll call it Quail Run, right?
Yeah.
And there's not a quail for 30 miles. So, this ordinance helps protect the trees, helps protect a lot of the nature and the wildlife around there. That's another thing that we need to look at, so we're not obliterating wildlife when we have a new development come in. And that kind of goes back to where we began, where we need to make what should Salem look like? The people in this community have said, we want open spaces, and they like the rural character that setting this. I have heard that on multiple occasions, and I'm sure you just heard it again tonight from Linda, and I know you'll hear from other people when you talk out on the road. Salem's growing. Whether we like it or not, Salem's gonna grow, and the data supports that. And I do not want Salem to look like Canton. That's just my opinion. So, that's all of our opinion. So, right now, I'll leave it. Any further questions?
I would like to clarify. When Linda thinks we disagree, it's usually because I didn't explain myself well enough, so maybe that's what's happening here. What I'm saying is if the reason that we're saying to do, if in this presentation or future discussions, the reasons can be listed. We took a poll in Salem and people are willing to do this, and maybe even worth an extra quarter millage point or something like that. Or we interviewed people looking for homes that came to Salem and said, hey, if you knew that there was a park within 5 minutes walk of you, how much more would that be in your decision to move to Salem? If it could be something like that, to give it a little more sticking power.
I think
I'll
we
say,
have,
you know
we
what I'm
have
saying?
done some of that.
Yeah.
We've done that
Oh, this-
already.
yeah.
I mean, we've done that with a questionnaire in a survey we did at Flag Day. And, with the properties that we've preserved, like over at Shatter, that's, the people who are in that neighborhood absolutely love that preserve there. And they feel that it enhances the value of their property
Well,
by
absolutely.
having that virgin woods there
Mhm.
forever. It'll be there forever, and we don't have to do anything. The trails are all handled by Land Legacy. They put all the trails in. They take out all the invasive species. They have people, educational things that come there to identify, the wildflowers, and there's crazy birds in there that you can't imagine. The peepers are out right now. They're like so loud, and it's so fun to just go there. And people park there. You see people park there and go there. And
I've got a couple more comments as well. There's one other item in the board packet about an overlay that Brighton has in their ordinances, which takes a look at, that's why I hung some of the maps up there, but the natural stream areas with the woods, like we talk about shatter type woods, and that's one of the key features of the Ann Arbor Township one, is that they use experts to identify the highest priority areas and just carve those out with an overlay, so that so you don't tax the whole property, you're just basically saying, we want you to stay away from this area or come to the planning if you have to get in that area, and show us how you're going to, you know, fix whatever damage you do to that area or replace it. But they use an overlay, to make a long story short, so they find because they also have maps of water recharge areas here. We also show some of our developments. We have Huron River Watershed, who gives us a lot of information on how to find these areas, so they'll actually do that stuff. It's not gonna cost us a lot of money to do it. We just need to write and adopt the ordinances. We can almost get some of that expert advice inexpensively.
It's just, a lot of the work's already been done by people who have spent a lot of time and expertise on doing that.
In
So-
April 2015 is when we had a meeting here at the Township with a big plan, and a lot of the folks from the Township came out and looked at the overall plan, trying to find the natural connect areas to see where there would be areas to look for more of these high priority properties. In the land preservation, we also have a means of studying and finding not a survey, but a rating process. We did 2 surveys of the township we have a Parks and Rec plan in our township. We've adopted a Parks and Rec plan. And in those, in order to do that, we had to do surveys. And those surveys do indicate that we're looking for park space, not as much that ball field type parks that we're expecting in Northville or Plymouth, but the walking trails, especially with our ditch is so close to the edge of the road. Anybody that's a runner or a biker, you can go maybe a half a mile and then you gotta switch to the other side of the road because there's a ditch right to the edge of the road, things like that. So trails and natural area for walking. So, people aren't gonna, they might be in their Amazon at night, but they eventually gonna want on the weekend go take a walk in a park.
Get away from the kids.
Get away from the kids. So we've got a lot of data.
Thank you, you guys did a great job. And I just wanna say that, Zach, what you hear today, with this is a sentiment across our township. People are very strong believers in this. We like our township the way it is. Also, we're not naive enough to think that it's not gonna change and the pressure's coming on. And so, I think you and I were talking about, okay, here's our rule and we have some sort of a variance, or okay, we can do this or whatever, but should we do that? And so we wanna try and stick to the rules to keep to our plan. And that's because this is a very strong sentiment in our township. We like the natural features, a lot of families, people wanna come out here all the time, and they can't find a place to be. Well, we've got our urban services district down there, and I think we may have been caught a little bit short with them, but it's not too late to start. And so that's gonna be a big priority for us as a township.
What I've heard is that this is the beginning of a long process. You've been in it a while, but it's kind of at the beginning, kind of setting the compass of we want more, and this is what we want to look like, and what we don't want to look like.
The problem is that we feel badly because even in the time frame that when we started in 2007, we've lost some beautiful pieces of property to people who just wanted it to be flat and then they put their house on it or several houses and so there's not that many parcels left really that are as beautiful as that shatter piece. There's a few still that we want to get, but and we have a few that are still on our docket to try and get. We have 190 acres that we're working on and a few things like that. But in general, we don't have a lot, but there are very important parts of our township that you really can't see, but it has to do with our water recharge. And it's in a map like this, and it shows in orange where our water recharge is. So we all in this township live off of our water. We survive on our water. And when you build on top of water recharge, it diminishes our aquifers. so it will change the quality of our water. So we've been working on the visual part, like the open spaces and the preserving of trees and being tree huggers and stuff, but we also have to think about our water.
It's
And-
amazing how sensitive that is, because really, if someone was careless and poured a gallon of insecticide, whatever, that all goes right down into our well water, all of our water, right? And that's why it's critical that we protect these properties, right, and identify them and begin to protect them. And we don't want them concreted over. You want those wetlands to act as that coffee filter to clean all the garbage out of it, right? And then let it naturally percolate down into our groundwater. So
I've heard nearly every person up here, well, Kevin hasn't been here long enough, but I'm sure he would be too. Because that's what we talk about in some of these things, and we've been caught short in the past. But I think we're on a good road now, with you guys, and, I think we'll be good moving forward. That map would be interesting to have, we should all have that. We should have that in our,
I'm sure we can get that.
in our ordinance book. And just like yours, does that change much? I mean, does that change over time? No,
No,
that's
it doesn't
It is
change,
as
well,
it is.
it can change, it can be destroyed.
You
Right.
don't want it.
Well, yeah,
But
it depends on
takes
development and
major
whatnot.
Construction to change that.
Well, if you'll
Right.
notice, it kinda really goes through the USD too.
Yeah.
I mean, the water
Very
recharge
unfortunate.
area goes right in goes
One.
kitty corner, one of them goes right through the USD.
Yeah.
So,
I wish we
and
could
then
do a
there's
redo on that.
some right up here near Salem Hills, right over here. I mean, it's, and the Huron River Watershed Council, I'm on the board there, and they have a very good organization, and they are working very, very hard to keep the Huron River clean and working, they've saved the Huron River, literally, from contamination.
An
And we
interesting
also have the
perspective.
We also have the Rouge River, we're part of both watersheds. We're so blessed, right? Because we're the headwaters to those.
The interesting perspective will be where do, like, when you talk about, people clear cutting their land and whatnot, is where personal property rights come into play. People wanting to do what they want to do. I know there was, I live near 6 Mile Angle, and Mr. Teeters lived a property behind us, and he had some fields there, but then he had a cutout of land, and in the spring, it was just the most beautiful place I've ever seen. And he would put signs on the trees and say, "Welcome, my neighbors," and there were paths in there, "Please enjoy my property," right? That's how he was.
That's nice.
And we'd take our kids back there and everything, and then, unfortunately, he passed, and his daughter passed, and another member of the family that's there, we went back there, and it looked like a tornado went through there, because apparently the logging or whatnot, and I couldn't believe it. It looked like Dorothy just kind of like photo her, just kind of, I mean, I've never seen
Yeah.
anything like that, and the trees were huge. I mean, I'm sure but it was so disappointing, but that's his property, but yet it just looked, and I asked my husband, he goes, "That's what they do, that's what loggers do." And I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe it. I'm thinking, we've been through there in all the little neighborhoods, whether it's that road that runs along Three Cedars, everybody used to go in there. It's gone, once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and
Once it's gone,
and
it's
that's some of
gone.
these
That's what I'm saying.
ordinances that been developed, that they're talking about, identify those, like, they call them, heritage trees.
Yeah, there was,
They cut them like about this high, though, they
Well,
didn't.
the reason they do that was that on a fence line?
No, it was just
So if they
everywhere, it
think
looked like
they're
a bomb went off
If
in
they think
there.
they're stealing it, they'll cut it.
kill their
high, so they don't,
they'll
do it.
die when their chainsaw blade cuts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Snaps in
my
it.
husband discovered one.
yeah,
Oh.
but those are called heritage trees, right? And some of these
They were
ordinances come
massive.
in, and when an individual will come in and want to cut these trees down,
Mhm.
that they have to come in and say, look, this tree is old, it meets this requirement, it's a 200-year-old tree, it needs to be preserved, or it needs to go because it's diseased or dying or whatever.
When the one down here in Goffredson Road, was it 255 houses going in there at Goffredson and Joy, something like that?
Yeah.
And they were talking about, this driveway goes right in. Can't you just make the driveway go around that tree? Can't you just?
It sickens me because you just see them, they just come in and they just level the whole place. And then they plant 3 twigs and call it that's our park. So there's not, when they get done, there's nothing left for a month. They call it runner quail. Anyway,
Okay.
so we'll leave it back to you, Pam, but
Thank
we
you.
would like to work with you and
Yep.
develop a subcommittee and go forward with that.
Well, we'll have to put that on our planning priorities list that Paul started for us.
Thank you.
And, thank you, you guys.
You're not gonna hang out, no?
Okay,
Now, see,
report of commissioners, board of trustee.
Salem Flag Day, June the 4th.
June the
Get
4th.
approval for that, and fireworks and.
Okay. CBA,
Two requests on March 9th, one from Brookville Garage, and the second one was coffee shop, because of the roundabout, for their sign. Had to be moved back 10 feet, because if you put it right on that decorative fence they have running around the front there, it'll be moved back to that point, and both of them were approved.
plan preservation, conservation, I think we're good. Planning consultant review.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'll get to the business first. There is a pickup in permits. This last month, we've issued a permit for 1 new house, for a new pole barn, for a new deck, for 3 residential alterations. We have had a couple of pre-application meetings, not gonna mention names to protect the innocent, but for kind of an athletic facility. And we've got a pre-application meeting for, I guess I can't describe this any other way, but a giant battery facility. So they have extra power and it goes into batteries, and then when they need power, it goes out of the battery. So we'll see about that. So there is some kicking around. The most exciting thing perhaps is that we are redoing office hours on Mondays. They're back. We're apparently clear from the pandemic to start those back up, so that's kind of exciting. The quick introduction, since I'm new, I'm not Paul. He's taking on some additional responsibilities, and I was in the bathroom when they determined that. No, just kidding. I have background in similar communities, and I really like zoning codes, so they said, you're the guy. My background, this is a bit more extra, but I think it's important to know people. So my undergraduate degree is in architecture at the University of Michigan, and that wasn't complex, and I didn't owe enough student debt, so I did urban planning. And I also dabbled in urban design and cognitive psychology while I was there. My first experience with real-world planning was when I moved back home after that to help out with family adventures. I was on the Village of Shepherd Planning Commission, and I had the fun experience where our staff reports were handwritten, photocopied handwritten stuff that was sitting on our table at the meeting. And because I had the fancy pants planning degree, everyone looked at me and said, what do we do? And from that experience, I take writing staff reports very seriously, because I had all this background and I looked at the stuff and I had no idea what was going on. Then my first planning job was in Angola, Indiana, for the county of Steuben. Indiana looks really similar, but it's also weird. Their planning and zoning is by city or by counties. Townships don't really exist except for on paper. An interesting thing with the parks and land preservation folks here was our county had 12 ski lakes, natural ski lakes, which is a lot for Indiana. No reservoirs, they did have dams to control the level, but there were only 3 parks where you could get to those lakes. And for me, it was very weird, because Michigan, most lakes have 3 parks on them. So my wife and I moved back to Ann Arbor. I worked for a long number of years for Dexter Township, and they also have the benefit of, in addition to the state land, Metro Park that runs through the Huron River there. So their recreation plan is, we've got state and Metro Parks and we're done. Let's see, I've been with Carlisle Wortman for 2 years now, in a bunch of different communities in different capacities. I'm in Oxford Township up in North Oakland County, in Tyrone Township, in Putnam Township. I was in Webster Township for a while, and because I don't have enough night meetings, I'm also on Dexter City Council there. I was on the ZBA there for a bit. Let's see, what else? When I was in Angola, I was on the Historic Commission. I forget the fancy name they had for it. It was the downtown area. They had kind of a square, and their claim to fame was they had the last Civil War monument that was built in Indiana and the second tallest. So they have the giant one in Indianapolis. This was the next one. It's easier once you know what everyone's already built there is how high to make it there. Let's see, I am also, as an elected official, on the Michigan Municipal League. What's the fancy title for this? Economic Development and Land Use Legislative Committee, which is a mouthful. Basically, when the state legislator is working on statutes that may affect land use or economic development, they call a bunch of elected officials together and say, how will this affect your community? Do you like it? Do you not like it? How would you change it? So it's cooled down a little bit now because they're getting ready for summer vacation, but when you hear about changes in mining operations or short-term rentals, I've been getting emails about that for weeks from these folks of how can we get it better. Fun thing is I do have a side gig on weekends, although it's going to finish up here, driving Zamboni at Veterans Memorial Ice Arena. And I can tell you it is exciting as you could imagine. You have not lived until you have power slid a 6-ton machine on wet ice with complete blind vision, and you need to have precision within 2 inches. So that's me in a nutshell. I will say one thing that I like to use these transition kind of periods for is to kind of poke and see what things you might want to do a little bit different. Not saying Paul didn't do well, because I've known him for many, many years, but just kind of that examination. So if you guys, if there's anything you'd like to see in the motions different or the staff reports or anything, let me know. And that's it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Welcome.
Welcome. One of the things I was thinking of for the planning priorities is I'd like to take another look at the USD. Bruce and I were talking about what 2 planners ago, we went through the master plan and the USD. We went through our master plan, and okay, it was done. And then he had left, and then Paul came in. And we improved it. And now the more we think about it, we think we'd be approved again, because one of the things I think we were caught short on with the developer that's there is we didn't have a visual. When they came in there wasn't a visual. We would say, this is the type of community, or this is what we do, this is what we like. They had nothing, and then they would come in and their highfalutin cars and whatnot and all this and that and try and steamroll us. And so now we want to say, this is what we like. This is what it looks like. So there's not as much, Canton-esque to our USD.
Well, and that's
We want it
interesting.
to look more walking park-ish, more open space. And so we started with that, and there's one picture in the master plan, but I think, which was good, because it was a huge improvement. But now we're thinking, this stuff's gonna be coming real fast.
And it's never too early to start to plan ahead. And one of the things that popped to me when they're talking about ruralness is that rural means something different for everybody.
Developers have a very different perception
Yep.
of rural.
Where I grew up, it meant dirt roads, propane pigs and no cable.
Right.
And my house growing up was 2 blocks from the grain elevator, so we'd get the little bits floating from the sky and thinking it was snowing and be horribly disappointed that we had school. I could tell you, Dexter Township, when they had that conversation, for them, it was less about the size of the lots and the number of houses as it was how did it feel when you're driving on the road. If you could see the back deck and the barbecue, that was not rural. But if there were 100 houses, but there was 200 feet of trees and you couldn't see it, they were good with that. So it's good to have that conversation and kind of get the common point that you can show them, and this is what we want.
I think this, the land preservation, had perfect timing. I know they were probably disappointed we didn't have a meeting last month, but it still turned out, I still
It was
think,
good. Thank you.
it turned out to be perfect timing for Zach coming in a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad he was here to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, a fun fact, when I was in graduate school for urban planning, I was renting a house from Miss Beejan
Oh.
on Division Street. I'm like,
You recognize her.
She recognized you?
I don't know. I wasn't the rent check guy, so,
I think it's
You leave the
important.
place nice?
yeah.
I'm sure he did, he's detailed us all get out. Sometimes I think what's been lost in the past and what the planning commission is trying to improve on is that we need to do more and better planning to be proactive as opposed to reactive. I think when I first started, I think we were very reactive, and I, of course, went off what I knew, and then it,
Catching up.
you learn, I'm finally catching on like 100 years
We
later.
we were catching up.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Not
Same
catching
thing.
on, that's for you to say, not for you to say. We were just catching up.
No
Yeah.
secrets here. So anyhow, that's how we wanna be. I think we have a good opportunity now that we've all kinda, I think we're under the gun. People work better under pressure. Schultz tank's right there. So, not to jump in front of them or anything, but to see, we're comparing to where we were when they first started and now where we are with the water. All of a sudden things start coming up and we're saying, are we prepared? Is this good enough? And I think when I look at our master plan, it gets better all the time, but I have to say, no, it's not really good enough. It can be better.
We have enough industrial.
We have enough industrial.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So, okay, very good. All right. Approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of, is it March?
February 28th.
February 28th, 2022 as submitted.
Do you have a second?
I second.
Kevin seconds. All those in favor of approving the minutes of February 28th, 2022 as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Public comment. Yes, Ms. Bonnie?
Mrs. Cooper Bonnie will do. Miss Bonnie is not my name.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, I'd like to ask Zach a question. When you list, is that okay?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
because I have to go through you. When you listed off all your achievements and places you were at, you were never on the committee that forced Salem to take the $20,000 grant money, were you?
I was never on that, no.
I don't know. Is that the 10 million?
The 10, did I say
We get
20,000?
20.
You said 20.
We got 10
20.
million and 10 million, and we got 20,000, and they gave us more, and we
20
didn't ask
million.
for it.
Okay,
we
that's
didn't
good.
know
No,
it
that's
was
all right. Let's
coming,
keep moving on.
and we just got it,
Yep.
Shostak knew
He's
all
clean.
about it, but we didn't.
Anyone else? Chairperson comment? Thank you, everyone. And welcome, Zach. And we are adjourned at 9:15.
And can I give these to you?
Yeah, let me turn on some.
Might as well pass mine.
Grand Canyon.